Rain came at the car like thrown gravel, hard enough to rattle the glass and make the doors hum in their frames. The wipers chased water left and right, frantic, carving brief windows through the storm before the next sheet erased everything. Headlights smeared on the flooded highway. Lane markers swam in and out of view, and then vanished beneath a rushing skin of water. Nicole sat rigid with her shoulder against the door. Silk clung to her ribs and thighs, heavy from the gala and heavier now. Her hair stuck to her neck. The cabin smelled of damp leather, cologne, and the iron breath of rain pulled up from asphalt. She watched her breath shiver pale in the dashboard glow, and tried to keep her words even. "Slow down," she said. "Please." Christopher did not look at her. The tightness in his jaw kept time with the wipers. The speed rose anyway. Tires hissed, lifted, caught again. Lightning cracked ahead, a white blade across the clouds, and for a heartbeat, the world became a flat river of light. "Listen to me," she said. She lied. He let out a short laugh without air in it. "Of course you would say that." She threw herself into the car. Nicole said, "You saw how she—" "I saw you," he said, clean and cold, still watching the road. "I saw what jealousy does to you." Rain hammered the roof. The seatbelt burned a line across Nicole's sternum. The glove compartment rattled each time the tires found a seam of water. Fog crawled along the edges of the windows like milk. She could not feel her hands from clutching the seat, a prickling numbness running up her wrists. "You did not even look at me," she said. "You did not ask." "Because I know you," he said. "Lately, that is enough." Tail lights ahead pulsed and wavered. In the side mirror, the world was only red and white, sliding through gray. Her toes cramped inside the heels. Cold crawled through the silk and settled in the small of her back. "Christopher," she said, forcing the tremor out of her voice, "you need to slow down. You cannot see." "I can see perfectly," he said, and pushed the engine higher until its note flattened into a punishing hum. A road sign flared into existence and vanished unread. Crosswind slapped at the car. The hood dipped and rose. The vehicle drifted until the shoulder's rumble strip growled beneath them, and he pulled it back with a jerk that knocked her head against the rest. Water found every seam. A loose receipt skated from the console and stuck to her wrist. She peeled it off with shaking fingers and felt the paper melt into pulp. Heat trickled from the vents, a thin stream that never reached the cold beneath her skin. "Pull over," she said. "You are not thinking." "I am thinking very clearly," he said, "clearer than you have in months." He cut right. The turn signal clicked twice and drowned in the rain. The shoulder appeared as a darker ribbon. Gravel slicked to paste under the tires. He braked hard, and the car slid, corrected, and came to a crooked stop beneath a bent sodium lamp that buzzed like a trapped insect. For a second the rain thinned. Two distant taillights dissolved down the highway. The lamp threw a small cone of jaundiced light onto the wet guardrail. Wind peeled a skin of water off the rail and slapped it against the door. He put the car in park. The engine idled with the fast breath of a startled animal. "What are you doing?" she asked. Ending this, he leaned across her. The scent of whiskey and rain moved with him. His shoulder pressed into her. She shrank into the cold door, bracing for the belt that cut her chest. "Christopher," she said, "do not." His fingers found the buckle by her hip. "Out," he said. "No," she said, the word catching on her teeth. "Not here? There is a storm." He opened the belt. The click was small and final. Tension slipped off her ribs. She grabbed for the strap. He peeled it from her shoulder in a single hard motion that felt like skin tearing. "Stop," she said. "Listen to me." "I am done listening." He reached past her, found the handle, and yanked. The door cracked open and the wind took it wide. Rain slapped her face. Cold flooded the footwell, and blew the warmth out of the cabin in one gasp. She planted both hands on the door to hold it, eyes narrowed to slits. "Please," she said, "do not do this." He looked at her then, a full look, the face she had memorized, stripped of every soft edge. Something quiet and old inside her went cold and hard at once. "You stopped being my wife a long time ago," he said. The words hit heavier than the wind. She shook her head. "I did not touch her," she said. "I did not. Get out." He grabbed the dress at her shoulder and hauled. Silk resisted with a wet squeal, then gave. She felt the tear as a pain that vibrated in her teeth. She clawed for the seat back and found only wet fabric and air. Her knee knocked the door pocket. Her shin struck the threshold. The inside of the door ran with water. The dash glistened. Wind turned her hair to a whip. The heels snagged in the carpet. He pulled again. The world tilted. She fell out. Her palms hit grit. Stones seeded her skin. One knee skidded and punched the shoulder's mud, and a bright, clean shock went up her leg. Cold water sloshed under her skirt and hammered her spine. The door flapped once, then closed. The car shuddered. "Christopher," she said, scrambling on hands and knees. The strap of one heel twisted around her ankle. The guardrail loomed a few strides away, black and slick. Beyond it was only the shiver of weeds and the smothered rush of runoff. The door sealed with a heavy thud. The lamp buzzed. Rain filled the air with needles. She got to her feet, the dress dragging like a net. One heel had snapped sideways. The other wobbled under her. She kicked both off. The slap of bare feet on the cold grit stole her breath. She lunged to the passenger window and slapped a wet palm against the glass. "Do not," she said. "Please." Inside he was a silhouette, shaped by gauge light. He looked through her. He set one hand at the top of the wheel. The engine waited like a held breath. "Please," she said again, and the word frayed in the wind. He shifted into drive. Her hand slid down the glass. The seam of the door cut her wrist. Water dripped from the mirror onto her fingers in a steady tick. The lamp hummed and did not care. He faced forward. The brake lights brightened. The car inched away, and for a few steps she walked with it, palm dragging a wet arc on the window. She struck the door with the heel of her hand. "Stop." The red glow flared, and for a heart-stop instant she believed he would stop, that the brightening meant recognition, reversal, mercy. Wind tore the thought from her open mouth. The brake lifted. The red softened and moved. He accelerated. Spray fanned from the tires and hit her with a slap that sank the silk deeper into her skin. The rear fishtailed a fraction, caught, straightened, and went. The exhaust note fell to a lower, confident tone as distance gathered under it. She stepped into the lane, and then thought of blind steel and slick rubber and strangers with no chance to see her. Headlights swelled to the size of moons, and she stumbled back to the shoulder, breath sawing uselessly in her throat. "Christopher," she called, and her voice scraped raw against the rain. The car became two red strokes, then red commas, then two pinpricks that the weather crushed and swallowed. The road took the sound and flattened it to nothing. Wind reached into the space the car had filled and shook the hem of her dress like it wanted to rip more from her. She wrapped her arms around herself, and the torn strap slapped her shoulder. Water threaded a cold line down her spine and collected at her waistband. Her hair poured in ropes. She looked at the place where her palm had smeared the window and found only a dull sheen. Grit embedded itself in the raw red crescents of her hands. A belt mark glowed across her chest and promised a bruise. The torn seam scratched along her ribs with every breath. She turned in a small circle. Guardrail, black wet ditch, rush of unseen water. Highway, noise, chance. Above her, A low ceiling of cloud pressed down as if the sky were holding its own breath. Insects battered the lamp. Every thunder roll rattled in the bones of the rail. Her phone lay in the car. He obeyed, too. She patted the wet silk out of habit and laughed once at the stupidity of it. The sound died inside the storm. A truck shouted past and through a wall of air that rocked her. She grabbed the rail. Metal bit through the rain into her palm and steadied her. She breathed in and felt ice settle under her ribs. She breathed out and saw the breath shiver away. Like a small animal, there were only stupid options. Stand here and freeze. Step into traffic and hope that compassion moved faster than physics. Walk. She set her bare foot forward. Grit shifted. The rail hummed as another vehicle passed above the roar. She moved again. The hem dragged behind like a drowned tail. She counted steps to keep her mind from naming losses. She lost count and started again. She learned the rhythm of the storm and stepped between its beats. Headlights ballooned and shrank. She hugged the white line without trusting it. When the rumble strip buzzed her arches, she edged left. When her toes found cold water, she edged right. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and saw only more rain. Lightning stitched the southern sky, and for a blink showed her an underpass ahead. A darker mouth in the concrete. Shelter. A place with a top to it, with fewer angles for the wind to find her. She walked toward it, the cold chewing higher at her shins. Each breath was a coin paid for a few more yards. The knit of the night loosened as she slipped under the bridge. The rain changed character, from assault to echo. Drips fell at a rhythm she could almost predict. The air was colder but still, and stillness felt like kindness. She leaned her back against the rough wall. The concrete snagged the silk and held her like a hand on her shoulder that said enough. She slid down until she sat with her knees up under the ruined dress, arms wrapped around them, chin on a ridge of bare skin. She tried to ease the strap away from the scrape on her clavicle, and hissed when it tugged. A car crossed above, and the tremor of it came down the pier into her shoulder blades. A slow, steady thump that suggested a heartbeat. She matched her breathing to it, and felt the panic back off by a finger's width. The storm outside drummed its logic, and the space beneath the bridge offered a different one. Stay, breathe, count. Wait. She tasted salt and iron and rain. The air smelled of wet dust and oil that had lived on concrete for years. Distant horns bleated like animals in fog. Her hands thawed enough to begin to ache. Pins and needles woke under the skin. She flexed her fingers, and the grit moved inside the cuts and made them sting. She placed her palms flat on the ground and felt the cold travel up her arms. She kept her eyes open. Closing them made the last image return too quickly. The angle of his face behind rain streaks. The pale glow on his cheekbone as he looked at her and did not see her. The brake light brightening. The breath that hitched in her throat and did not finish. She let the image blur against the real drip and hum under the bridge until it lost some of its sharpness. She was alone on the shoulder of a world that did not pause. The storm held its size around her and did not ask questions. Behind her, 2 red points had gone out like matches in rain. Ahead of her, the underpass kept its promise of a small roof and hard walls. She lay her forehead on her knees and breathed until the breath stacked into something like time. Outside, the highway roared and softened and roared again. Inside, the concrete answered with a stubborn quiet. She stayed there until the cold in her bones felt organized instead of wild. Then she lifted her face, listened to the rain pour its steady argument, and learned the shape of being left. The underpass held the storm like a clenched fist, its concrete ribs trembling each time thunder rolled across the highway above. Water still came through in thin silver threads that found her shoulders and cooled the heat of her skin. But the roof was enough to call this shelter. Nicole sat on the cold concrete with her knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight, chin tucked against the shiver that kept starting and stopping inside her. The sound of tires overhead became a heartbeat she could borrow. Her breath misted in front of her and vanished. The smell under the bridge was wet metal, diesel smoke, and the faint sour of old oil. It was not safety, but it was stillness. She could think here, for the first time since the door had opened and the rain had swallowed her. She could think. She pressed her palm to the seatbelt mark across her chest and winced. The skin there was swollen, tender. Beneath the bruise, her heart still raced. She could almost hear his voice under the roar of the rain, those clipped, calm syllables he used when he wanted to end a conversation. Out. You stopped being my wife a long time ago. She had thought nothing could sound colder than thunder until then. She rubbed her hands together to warm them and looked down at the grit ground into her palms. Each tiny stone was set in a patch of blood. She worked them out one by one with her nails. The sting made her eyes water, but she kept going until her skin was smooth enough to hold something again. When she was finished, she tore another strip from the bottom of her dress and used it to wipe the blood away. The silk shredded easily, useless for anything but survival. Outside, the highway glowed in patches of yellow where lamps fought to hold back the rain. She could see the blur of passing trucks, their headlights cutting ribbons through the storm, then vanishing as if the darkness had swallowed them whole. The air was full of sound, water slapping against the road, engines droning, tires spitting mud, but inside the bridge, it felt like the world was holding its breath. Nicole stood, testing her legs. They felt distant, as if her mind had not yet returned to them. Her bare feet met the ground with small shocks of pain, each step reminding her of skin torn open by gravel. She gathered what was left of her skirt in one hand and stepped closer to the edge of the bridge. The rain came at her sideways, hard, almost horizontal. The cold burned her cheeks clean of tears. She scanned the highway. No cars had stopped. No one had turned back. The storm blurred everything past 20 feet into movement and noise. She thought of walking toward the glow of the city, but her body argued with her mind. Her body said she was too cold, too tired, too broken to make the distance. Her mind said staying here would turn her into another story, told by morning news anchors, who used words like tragedy and unidentified. She started walking. Each step was an act of small defiance. The asphalt was slick, broken by shallow rivers of runoff that splashed up against her ankles. The sound of her steps was swallowed by the storm, leaving her invisible. Every few seconds, a car tore past, sending a wall of water that slapped against her legs. She did not flinch anymore. She had already been thrown into worse. She counted the seconds between lightning and thunder. 2, 4, then 3 again. The storm was moving sideways, not away. Good. It meant she could walk with it and disappear. She reached the end of the bridge and stepped back into open rain. Ahead, the shoulder curved and dipped, leading to a darker stretch of road where the lights grew fewer. She could just make out a small green sign, its surface slick with rain. She squinted but could not read it. It did not matter. Direction had become a luxury. Forward was enough. She kept her right hand grazing the metal guardrail. It hummed faintly under her fingers when cars passed, a low vibration that felt a lie. She began using it to measure time, 10 breaths between hums, then another 10. The rhythm steadied her. She could not think about what she had lost yet. Not the house, not the man, not the years she had built around the lie of his love. All of that was too large to fit in her hands. For now, She could only hold motion. A pair of headlights slowed behind her. She turned. A dark sedan crept toward the shoulder. The shape of a driver, vague through the misted glass, leaned closer. The window rolled down halfway, spilling warm air and music. A man's voice called out through the rain, friendly, rehearsed. "Hey, you need a ride. You okay out here?" Nicole froze. The question carried something she couldn't name. Pity, maybe, or curiosity, but she could not risk it. Her body remembered how trust had felt an hour ago, and it was still bleeding. She shook her head without speaking and took a step back from the light. The car idled, as if waiting for her to reconsider, then rolled forward and merged back into the dark river of traffic. The silence that followed was louder than his voice had been. She took one long breath and exhaled the fear that had locked her ribs. Her heart slowed just enough to let thought return. Her phone, her purse, all gone. The realization landed like a stone in her stomach. He still had everything: her identification, her credit cards, her contacts. He could spin whatever story he wanted before she even reached someone who would listen. The unfairness of it twisted through her chest, but she pushed it down. There would be time for anger later. Survival came first. Lightning flashed again, lighting the road ahead. This time she saw a structure, a low overpass, maybe a quarter-mile away. Beyond it, faint and far, a glow that might be a gas station or diner. She could reach that. She had to. She walked faster. The cold made her limbs feel carved from stone, but movement kept the pain manageable. She told herself to focus on small things: the rhythm of the rain, the sound of her breathing, the way her feet found purchase on wet asphalt. One step after another. That was all it took to stay alive. When she reached the second bridge, she paused. The sound here was different, lower, closer. With the rumble of engines passing above her head, she could smell wet earth and something faintly sweet, maybe wildflowers crushed by runoff. She was too tired to investigate the beauty of it. She kept walking. It was then she heard another engine, slower, heavier. A truck this time, the kind that sounded older than the road itself. The headlights rose out of the rain behind her, amber instead of white, softer, almost kind. The truck eased toward the shoulder, tires crunching against gravel. It stopped a few feet ahead. The wipers moved like a metronome set to patience. Nicole hesitated. Her instincts were torn between suspicion and need. She stepped closer to the guardrail, ready to run if she had to. The passenger window rolled down, groaning against age, and warm air spilled into the rain. "Baby, what are you doing out here?" a woman called. The voice was roughened by years, but threaded with warmth, like the low hum of a lullaby. Nicole blinked against the rain. She could see the driver now, silver hair pulled back tight, glasses glinting, eyes steady, not pitying, not appraising, just seeing. "You'll freeze," the woman said. "Come on, get in. I've got heat." Nicole's throat ached when she tried to answer. The words came out in fragments. "He left me my car. He took everything." The woman nodded once, as if that explained the entire world. She reached behind her seat and pulled out a blanket. "Here," she said. "We'll get you warm." The doors unlocked. "Honey, vinyl seats. You can't hurt them." Nicole took one step, then stopped. Her body was still trying to make sure kindness was real. The woman did not move, did not reach out, only waited. After a long moment that stretched between lightning strikes, Nicole opened the door and climbed in. The warmth hit her like breath after drowning. The truck's interior smelled of coffee and cedar. The heater wheezed and hummed. The blanket landed on her lap, soft and scratchy, smelling faintly of soap. She pressed it to her skin and shuddered as sensation came back in painful waves. "Name's Dorothy," the woman said. That'll do for now. Nicole nodded. The sound of the rain changed here, muted against the truck's roof. She felt the world narrowing to something manageable. The hum of the engine, the steady beat of wipers, the glow of the dashboard lights trembling against the windshield. Where to? Dorothy asked. Nicole looked out at the storm and thought of home. The image of that house, the grand facade, the empty windows, made her stomach twist. Not home, not anymore. She needed somewhere safe, somewhere small enough to fit what was left of her. "À dîner," she said softly, "off the next exit. I need to call a friend." Dorothy nodded and eased the truck back onto the highway. The tires found their grip. The wipers beat time. They moved slow, steady, unbothered by the violence of the rain. For the first time that night, Nicole let herself look back. The bridge she had just left receded into darkness. A hollow mouth closing behind her. She saw her reflection in the window, pale and unfamiliar, and tried not to flinch. She had walked through the storm and survived it. That was all she needed to know. They drove in silence for a while. Dorothy hummed under her breath, an old tune that sounded like something meant to keep children calm. Nicole closed her eyes but did not sleep. Her mind replayed the scene in the garage, the sound of Brittany's scream, the disbelief in Christopher's eyes. She felt the heat of shame rise again, and then forced it back down. There would be a reckoning, not tonight, but soon. Dorothy spoke again, quiet but certain. "You don't have to talk, baby, but if you want to, I'm listening." Nicole swallowed and nodded. She didn't trust her voice yet. The storm softened outside, as if it too was listening. When they took the exit, the neon lights of a 24-hour diner cut through the dark like a promise. Dorothy parked close to the door and let the engine idle, heater still blowing. Nicole hesitated before getting out. The truck had become its own kind of shelter. Dorothy gave her a small nod, the kind that said, "Go on, you're safe enough." Nicole opened the door. Rain met her again, but softer now. She pulled the blanket tighter and ran toward the light. The bell above the diner door rang, sharp and bright, and somewhere behind her, carried in the electric hum of the storm, a single fact waited to be seen. He did not know the garage cameras had caught Brittany injuring herself at 22:14:36. The elevator doors slid open with a soft metallic sigh, spilling her into the gray chill of the underground garage. The hum of the gala above had vanished, replaced by the low electric drone of fluorescent lights fighting the dark concrete stretched in every direction, wet in patches from a storm that hadn't yet reached the surface. The air smelled of motor oil and rain-soaked asphalt. Nicole's heels echoed. Each step was sharp and deliberate, though her chest still carried the echo of humiliation from the ballroom. She had smiled through dinner, through whispers, through his indifference. Now the mask was gone. The sound of her shoes was the only proof she existed. She spotted the car, a sleek black shape glistening under a half-dead bulb. Drops of water fell from the ceiling and burst on the hood. The air was cool enough that her breath misted in front of her. She reached for the door handle, but stopped. Her reflection in the tinted glass looked foreign, eyes too bright, mouth tight from swallowing too many polite lies. A sound broke behind her, heels on concrete, light, practiced, and approaching fast. Nicole turned slightly, enough to see a white dress glide between the pillars. Brittany, the younger woman, moved with confidence, the staccato rhythm of her steps almost mocking. Her blonde hair gleamed under the fluorescent light, perfectly curled despite the damp air. She didn't belong in this cold place, but then again, maybe she did. "You know he doesn't love you anymore," Brittany said. Her voice was sugar, laced with venom. Nicole's fingers curled against the car door. Her voice came out low, steady, almost kind. "You need to stay away from my husband." Brittany smiled, A perfect crescent. Your husband? Please. He's mine now. He has been for months. The words hit harder than she wanted them to. Nicole blinked once, slowly, forcing her breath to stay even. She had spent years training her face to reveal nothing in courtrooms. At galas, in photographs beside the man she once believed saw her. But in this light, the truth pressed too close. You should leave, Nicole said. Go home before you embarrass yourself. Embarrass myself. Brittany tilted her head, letting her voice sharpen. He told me you were pathetic, that he stays only out of pity. Look at you, standing here in that perfect dress, pretending the world still believes your little fairy tale. Nicole's pulse quickened, but her face remained still. Every word Brittany spoke felt like it was meant to draw blood, and she refused to bleed for her. She turned away, meaning to open the car door, to leave this woman to her illusions. Then Brittany's voice rose, loud enough to echo. Why don't you admit it? You're jealous. You always were. Nicole turned back, slow and deliberate. Her tone carried no anger, only exhaustion. Jealousy would mean I want what you have. I don't envy a woman who survives by lying. Something flickered in Brittany's eyes, an edge of calculation. Her hand flexed at her side, the manicured nails glinting. For a long second, the two women stood in the gray space between violence and silence. Then Brittany moved. She threw herself backward against the car beside them. The thud of impact filled the garage, followed instantly by the shriek of an alarm. The sound tore through the air like panic itself. Brittany's scream followed. High, sharp, rehearsed. She clawed at her own arms, dragging her nails across skin until red streaks appeared. Her voice cracked in perfect rhythm. Stop, Nicole. Stop. Get away from me. Nicole froze. Her mind tried to make sense of what her eyes saw. The deliberate arch of Brittany's spine, the precise angle of each scratch. She stepped back, hands raised, heart thundering. The sound of heels on the stairwell above broke through the alarm's wail. Men were coming. She wanted to run but couldn't move. Christopher appeared first, descending the stairs two at a time. Two men from the gala followed, faces tight with curiosity and self-importance. His eyes found Brittany crumpled on the ground, sobbing, pale arms streaked red. He didn't even glance at Nicole. What happened? His voice was sharp, already full of judgment. Brittany gasped between sobs. She attacked me. I told her I cared about your work and she went crazy. Look what she did. She thrust her arms toward him. The scratches were shallow, too clean to be accidental. Nicole could see the crescent indentations from fingernails, the lack of swelling where a real strike would have landed. But the men weren't looking for truth. They were looking for a villain, and Christopher had already chosen one. Christopher, Nicole said, forcing calm into her voice. She did this to herself. You can see that. She threw herself at the car and screamed my name. He didn't answer. He was kneeling beside Brittany, brushing her hair away from her face with a tenderness that made Nicole's stomach turn. His voice softened, full of care he hadn't used on her in months. Did she hit your head? Are you bleeding anywhere else? Nicole stepped forward. Christopher, look at me. You're being lied to. When he finally looked up, his expression was something colder than anger. It was disgust, pure, undiluted, like he was seeing her for the first time and realizing she was something less than human. Get in the car, he said. She didn't move. Christopher, listen to me. There are cameras here. They saw everything. The footage will show you what really happened. He straightened, jaw tight, eyes hard. Get in the car, Nicole. Now, the sound of his voice cracked through her like lightning through glass. She wanted to argue, to scream, but she saw the other men watching. The pity in their faces hurt worse than anything Brittany could have said. She turned, walked to their car, and opened the door. Her hands shook so badly, she could barely hold the handle. Inside, the air was thick and silent. The clutch lay on the seat beside her, small and useless. She stared through the windshield, at the scene outside, the white dress trembling in his arms, the men murmuring like witnesses in a trial that had already been decided. The alarm cut off. The echo remained. Christopher climbed into the driver's seat. He slammed the door, started the engine, and gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Rain began to fall again, striking the windshield in rapid, uneven bursts. "You've embarrassed me," he said. "Do you understand that, at my own event, I didn't touch her?" Nicole said quietly. "She did that to herself." He laughed once, short and empty. "Of course you'd say that. You've been jealous since the day I hired her. I should have seen this coming." The wipers struggled against the rain, smearing water into blurred streaks. Nicole's eyes shifted toward the rearview mirror. In the far corner of the garage, she caught it. A faint red light blinking on the wall. A security camera. Watching. Recording. Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but from conviction. "You're wrong. That camera saw everything. It knows the truth even if you refuse to." He didn't respond. He shifted into gear. The car lurched forward, tires hissing against wet concrete. They climbed the ramp toward the surface, leaving the sound of the alarm behind. The light from the garage faded into the rain-soaked night, and with it, any illusion that the man beside her still loved her. As the car merged onto the highway, thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to shake the mirrors. The red glow from the dashboard flickered across his face, carving his anger into sharp lines. Nicole turned her head just enough to see the reflection of that garage shrinking in the distance, a small square of light buried in shadow. Somewhere inside that concrete maze, under the weight of silence and disbelief, the truth was still alive. The camera's lens had not blinked. It had seen the white dress strike metal, the self-inflicted wounds, the woman in red standing still. The timestamp burned itself into the memory of the machine. 22:14:36. Cam B2. The line between lies and evidence had already been drawn, invisible for now. Waiting for morning, Christopher drove faster. The rain came harder. The world blurred. Nicole's hand rested on her lap, the faintest tremor running through her fingers. Somewhere in the chaos outside, justice was already recording. Quiet, unblinking, and patient, the rain had turned heavy enough to erase the world. Wind shoved at the car, a steady push from nowhere that made the frame hum. The wipers clawed at the windshield in vain, the rubber skipping across glass slicked with floodwater. The road ahead was nothing but a blur of white light and dark motion. Nicole gripped the edge of her seat, fingers whitening. Each breath came shallow, almost timed with the thud of the tires hitting puddles. Every few seconds, water hit the undercarriage with a slap that sounded like a hand striking flesh. She turned toward him, hoping to see some flicker of reason in his face. Christopher's eyes stayed forward, his hands locked on the wheel. The veins stood out along his wrists. The glow from the dashboard made him look carved from cold stone. He pressed the gas harder, and the car surged. "Slow down, Christopher. Please." Her voice came out low but steady, the calm tone she had once used in court to keep from shaking. He didn't even blink. "Don't tell me how to drive." The engine strained. Rain streamed sideways now, drawn by speed. The road dipped slightly and the sound changed. Less a hum, more a hiss of water against rubber. The car hydroplaned for half a heartbeat, and she felt her stomach drop before the tires caught again. "You can't see anything," she said. "You'll kill us." He laughed once, short and hollow. "You think I'm the one who can't see?" Lightning flared so close that the world turned white. For an instant, she saw his reflection in the glass. his jaw tight, eyes wild with something deeper than anger. The flash faded, and they were both shadows again. Nicole pressed her palm against the welt where the seatbelt crossed her chest. The pain throbbed in rhythm with the rain. "You need to stop," she said. "You're angry? Just pull over until this passes." "I'm angry because you humiliated me. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." His voice climbed until it had the brittle edge of glass. "You had one job. Look perfect. Stay quiet. And let me work." Her heart stung at the way he said it. Her role reduced to background noise. "I didn't do anything. She attacked me. And you." "Enough," he snapped. "You're so predictable. Every time something goes wrong, you turn it into a victim story." The rain pounded harder, furious as his words. Water coursed down the glass like veins of mercury. She could barely see the faint outline of road signs passing. She said quietly, "There are cameras. Christopher, they saw what really happened. They'll show you." He barked a short laugh. "I don't care what a camera thinks. Cameras can't save you from who you've become." Her throat tightened. That was the moment she understood the distance between them wasn't new. It had been growing silently for months, maybe years. The love she had once believed in had curdled into contempt. The silence in the car was so deep it felt physical, pressing into her ribs. "Christopher, please," she whispered. "We can fix this, but not like this." He said nothing, only pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer needle rose. The outside world smeared into streaks of gray and gold. The wind roared against the glass. Then he spoke, voice lower, almost reflective. "You stopped being my wife a long time ago." The words hit harder than the storm. She turned toward him, searching for any trace of the man she had once known. But his profile was carved from anger. She looked down at her lap. The silk of her dress clung to her legs, heavy with water, the torn hem sticking to her knee. Something inside her folded in on itself and went still. The car hit a patch of standing water. The rear tires lost grip, fishtailed, caught again. She flinched and braced against the door. Her breath came sharp. Christopher corrected, too fast, and the tires squealed against the wet asphalt. "Stop the car," she said. "You're going to kill us." He didn't stop. He didn't even seem to hear her. The rain turned to hail, small, hard stones striking the roof in a relentless rhythm. "You don't get it, do you?" he said. "You are so threatened by any woman near me that you'd burn everything down just to feel powerful." She shook her head. "You think this is power, throwing your wife out into a storm because a liar cried on cue." He turned toward her then, just for a second, eyes blazing. "I gave you everything. You think anyone would know your name without me?" The car drifted toward the shoulder. She saw the white line blur beneath the window, saw the steel guardrail looming. Her pulse spiked. "Pull over, Christopher. Now." He jerked the wheel back. The tires screamed. A truck horn blared behind them, deep and furious. The noise hit her chest like a shock wave. The seatbelt locked across her sternum again, the same sharp sting reopening the bruise. She pressed her hand against it, feeling the hot throb of pain. Her head was light, her throat tight. For a moment, she thought she might faint. Christopher's breathing had gone ragged. He leaned forward, his knuckles bone white on the wheel. Outside, lightning flashed again, close enough that it filled the car with white fire. For half a heartbeat, she saw his reflection against the glass again, jaw clenched, eyes wet with rage and confusion. Then he yanked the car toward the shoulder and slammed the brake. The seatbelt bit deep into her shoulder. Her body lurched forward, then back. The car skidded sideways, tires grinding against gravel. They came to a stop at an angle under a flickering streetlight. The sound of the rain rushed back in, louder than before. "What are you doing?" she asked, breath shaking. He stared straight ahead. Ending this, he reached across her suddenly, the motion fast, hard. terrifying. His shoulder crashed into hers. She shoved at him, panic turning her voice sharp. "Christopher, stop." He found the buckle at her hip and pressed it. The belt went slack. Cold air burst in as he yanked the door open. The wind howled into the car, bringing rain and the smell of ozone. "Get out," he said. Her mind went blank. "You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking?" "Get out." She gripped the seat with both hands. The fabric was slick, the leather wet. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Christopher's jaw tightened. His voice came out low and shaking. "You disgust me." He grabbed her arm. The torn strap of her dress ripped further with a sound like wet paper. She tried to twist away, but his grip was iron. He pulled harder. She caught the doorframe, her nails scraping against the metal, but he was stronger. The world tilted. Her feet hit wet gravel. The cold bit through her skin. She stumbled backward, heels slipping on mud. The impact knocked air from her lungs. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Christopher's voice came through the roar of the rain. "Get up." She looked up at him through the blur of water and tears. He was a silhouette in the storm, face unreadable behind the streaks on the glass. She took one step toward the car, her hand out. "Please don't do this," she said, but her words vanished into thunder. He looked at her one last time. His face was still empty. Then he slammed the door. The taillights flared red and receded down the highway, 2 points of light fading into the downpour until they were gone. Nicole stood alone on the side of the road. Rain lashed her skin, soaking the red silk until it clung like armor. Her bare feet sank into cold grit. She tasted salt and metal and fear. The wind shoved her once, hard enough to make her stagger. The street light flickered overhead, buzzing like a dying insect. Around here, the storm had no rhythm, no mercy. The only sound that remained constant was the low growl of the engine as it disappeared into the night. Steady, indifferent, as if none of this mattered to it at all. The diner door shut out the storm with a sound like a held breath. Warm air rolled over Nicole's skin, thick with coffee, syrup, and old heat trapped in chrome. Her body didn't know what to do with the sudden safety. It trembled as if to keep the cold alive a little longer. Water dripped from her hair to the linoleum. The dress hung heavy, its ruined silk clinging to her legs. Dorothy guided her gently toward a booth in the corner, beside a vent that hummed low and steady. "Sit here." "Honey," she said, "get the warmth first." Nicole sat. Her knees hit the underside of the table, and she didn't even feel it at first. The heater's breath crept up her legs, hot enough to sting. It was the kind of pain that meant the body was coming back. The waitress appeared, a woman in her 50s with a silver pen tucked behind one ear. "Coffee," she said softly. "I'll bring it now." She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Dorothy slipped into the seat opposite, watching Nicole with quiet alertness. The blanket she'd offered earlier was damp around the edges, but it held heat. She reached into her trucker's coat, pulled out another thin wool one, and handed it across the table. "Here," she said. "It isn't new, but it's warm." Nicole draped it over her legs. "Thank you." Her voice barely reached above the hum of the heater. Dorothy smiled, small and certain. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you stop shaking." The waitress returned, setting down 2 steaming mugs and a plate of toast, slick with butter. "On the house," she said. The coffee was black and bitter, the kind of bitterness that made sense. Nicole cupped it with both hands, letting the heat climb through her fingers. When she took a sip, the warmth burned down her throat and settled like a promise. They sat without speaking for a few minutes. The storm battered the windows, but it couldn't quite get in. The hum of the refrigerator filled the spaces between the rain. Dorothy broke the silence first. "Give me the smallest truth you can," she said gently. "The smallest one you can lift right now." Nicole's eyes stayed on the steam rising from her cup. "My husband left me," she said. "On the highway." He believed a lie. Dorothy didn't flinch. Some lies wear tuxedos, she said. Some drive luxury car. Nicole gave a short, startled sound that might have been a laugh. The motion made the seatbelt welt on her chest throb. She placed a hand over it. Her skin felt foreign, as if it belonged to another woman's story. He thought I hurt someone, she said after a pause. I didn't. The cameras know that. Dorothy nodded, as though she had already decided to believe her. Then she slid her phone across the table. Use this, she said. Call whoever knows your name for real. Nicole hesitated, then took it. Her fingers left faint, damp prints on the case. She dialed a number she hadn't said out loud in months. The call connected on the second ring. Rochelle answered in motion, her voice already alive with alarm. Where are you? Nicole read the name of the diner from the menu, her voice unsteady. A truck stop off 77. Dorothy leaned in and supplied the exit number. Stay put, Rochelle said. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming. Then, lower. Are you alone? I'm with someone, Nicole said. She helped me. Put her on. Dorothy took the phone. Her voice turned practical and soft. Yes, she's safe. She's cold. We'll wait. 20 minutes. All right. Drive careful. She handed the phone back. She's coming, Dorothy said. You're not alone anymore. Nicole exhaled like someone who'd been holding her breath since the rain started. She tried to finish the toast, but her jaw ached from clenching. The crumbs felt heavy in her mouth. She swallowed anyway. The waitress returned with a clean towel heated under a lamp. For your hands, she said. Nicole pressed it against her palm. The heat worked its way into the small cuts where gravel had bitten. She cleaned the grit away, then wiped her face. The towel came back gray. Dorothy fetched a first aid kit from the counter and opened it with quiet ceremony. Let me, she said. Nicole nodded. Dorothy cleaned each scrape with practiced care. Her touch, gentle and sure. The antiseptic stung, but it was a different kind of pain. Controlled. Useful. You'll bruise, Dorothy said. But bruises are honest. They show up when they should. Nicole almost smiled. She watched Dorothy wrap a bandage around her knee. The gesture as steady as the storm was wild. Tell me your name again, Dorothy said. Nicole. Good. Names are anchors. Hold on to it. Outside, thunder rolled far away now, like a conversation ending. Inside, the diner carried on. The clatter of plates, the scrape of chairs, the soft sizzle from the kitchen. Normal life. Unshaken. Nicole drank from that normalcy like water. Rochelle arrived in less than 20 minutes. Rain still in her hair, eyes sharp enough to cut through noise. She spotted Nicole instantly. In 2 strides she was there, wrapping her coat around Nicole's shoulders, pressing her close. I've got you, she whispered. It's over for tonight. Dorothy stood to give them room. Rochelle looked at her and said, Thank you. Dorothy shrugged. Some nights the world asks you to stop. I just listened. Rochelle guided Nicole back into the booth and took out her charger, scanning the counter for an outlet. We need your phone, she said. Did you have it? It's dead, Nicole said. It was in his car. Rochelle nodded, already switching gears. We'll use mine for now. Write what happened. No feelings. Just facts. Bullets. Time. Words you heard. Where you were standing. Nicole took the phone. Her hands trembled once, then steadied. She began typing. The keys clicked softly. Garage. White dress. Alarm. Self-inflicted scratches. His voice. Seatbelt. Gravel. Each word landed like a nail hammered into something solid. Dorothy watched the 2 women work, her eyes soft with understanding. You 2 turn pain into paper, she said. That's power, even if you don't call it that yet. Rochelle smiled briefly without looking up. Power's just truth that hasn't been silenced. A bowl of soup arrived for Nicole. She sipped it slowly, salt and heat grounding her. Rochelle made 3 short phone calls. Measured, factual, professional. Each ended with the same word, received. Then she pulled a file from her bag, tapping it on the table. Foundation bylaws, she said. You have more standing than he ever let you know. His name isn't the company's spine. You are. Nicole blinked, the idea too large to hold at once. She took another spoonful of soup, just to have something to do with her hands. Outside, the rain softened to drizzle. The neon sign above the diner door flickered, washing the window in red light that pulsed in time with the heater's hum. Rochelle pulled out a portable battery and connected it to Nicole's phone. The screen lit slowly, as though remembering its duty. Notifications began to flood in, vibrations stacking one atop another. Relentless. Dorothy glanced at the phone and then at Nicole. That sound means your story's running faster than your fear. Nicole unlocked the screen. Messages from donors, employees, journalists. One line froze her breath. Security footage from hotel garage goes viral. Rochelle leaned in, eyes narrowing. Play it, she said quietly. Nicole tapped the link. The screen filled with the gray palette of the parking garage, the same one she had stood in only hours before. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 22:14:36. The camera angle was wide, impartial, unblinking. Brittany in white, the fall, the self-made scratches, her own figure standing still, unmoving, framed in the truth. The diner's hum faded behind the sound of her pulse. For a moment, she could almost hear the storm outside surrender. Rochelle set a hand on her wrist. You don't need to say anything yet. Let the world talk first. Nicole looked up from the screen. The reflection of the timestamp flickered across her eyes. The heater exhaled. The coffee pot hissed. The phone kept buzzing. Relentless. And somewhere inside that noise, Justice had found a voice that would not go quiet again. The video on her phone was a cold square of truth. The garage lived there in gray and white, fluorescent light pooling on concrete. Brittany in white stepped into frame, all edges and intention. Her back hit the neighboring car. The alarm flashed into a silent bloom on the screen. Fingernails carved easy, red along pale forearms. Nicole in red stood still, hands open, a small anchor in a room built for echoes. In the corner, the time glowed with the patience of a clock that never learned how to lie. The camera label sat like a stamp. The world could read. The world would. The diner's sounds returned by layers. The coffee machine hissed. A fork clicked against ceramic. Rain drummed on the roof like a tired drummer who refused to stop. Over all of it, the phone shuddered, a hard little thrum that ran through the napkin dispenser into the table and up her arms. Rochelle watched the clip once, then again, eyes narrowing. You've set. She did not gasp. She did not swear. She looked the way lawyers look when the chessboard stops pretending to be complicated. Dorothy leaned back and let the heater breathe along their shins. The phone lit with a name that used to open rooms. Christopher. The circle of light began to crawl. Nicole did not move. The ring ended and began again. Insistent. Nearer. Like footsteps in a hall. Rochelle touched the edge of the phone. A gentle tap. Not yet, Rochelle said. Let the world talk first. Messages stacked in a climb that felt like weather. Gerald. Then a partner. Then a donor. Headlines slid in with clipped previews. Words like collapse and viral and emergency shouldered one another for space. A financial feed Nicole had never followed announced a plunge with the clean cruelty of a graph. She set the phone on the chrome napkin holder to stop feeling the hum in her bones. It rattled there instead, a small mechanical animal trying to escape. Rochelle sent the clip to a safe place. She saved the link. She wrote the time in clean letters in 2 separate messages, one to herself, one to the friend who never printed a word she could not prove. Dorothy poured more coffee and nudged the cup toward Nicole's hands. Heat will help, Dorothy said. Your body needs to know the math has changed. Nicole drank. Bitterness steadied her mouth. She could feel her hands again. The fog behind her eyes thinned. Christopher's name spread across the glass once more. The photo he had chosen years ago looked like a man who knew where doors were. The circle tried to finish and failed. A voicemail badge appeared. Then another. Rochelle slid her thumb and sent his number to a quiet corner without deleting anything. We keep the channel, Rochelle said. Silence is not absence. It is control. Dorothy read a headline over Nicole's shoulder and breathed through her nose like someone pushing a heavy thing. Security footage exposes Mistress's lies. Another headline rose under it with the easy malice of a tide. Billionaire abandons wife in storm. A third, colder. Investors withdraw. Emergency board session called. Gerald's call did not give up. Nicole answered. His voice sounded like a man holding a box with the bottom about to go. Nicole, he said. You have seen it. Enough, she said. The footage, it is everywhere, he said. The board has called an emergency meeting in less than an hour. Commitments are vanishing. I will not name the sum while you are still under fluorescent light and wet air. He paused. If he calls you, do not make statements. If you need to step out, do not do it alone. Rochelle took the phone with a small lift of her hand. The way you take the wheel when the car begins to drift. Gerald, she said. It is Rochelle. She will make no statements. Send the board invite to both of us. Secure every camera angle from that garage. Mirrored copies. Chain of custody in writing. If a single file moves, it moves with our signatures. The pause was shorter this time. Yes, Gerald said, yes. The invite landed in their inboxes before Rochelle said goodbye. She set the phone down like settling a brick into mortar. The phone buzzed again with a shade of panic. Christopher. Dorothy placed her palm flat on the table. Open. An offer that did not presume to touch. You are allowed to keep a door closed, Dorothy said. That is not cruelty. That is breath. Nicole let the call fade. Another voicemail icon joined the stack. She did not press play. In her chest, the earlier line still burned like a welt. You stopped being my wife a long time ago. She pressed her hand there and felt only skin and a pulse that was learning a new beat. Rochelle listened to the latest message, with the speaker pressed to her chest so the room would not have to take the sound. She forwarded the file to the same safe folder as the clip. Evidence belongs in places that do not forget, Rochelle said. That includes you. The Foundation's comms director texted a draft that smelled like distance. The board requests a statement. Rochelle deleted the ask with a line that felt like a steel rule. One sentence after the vote. Not before. Then a second message. The Foundation remains Nicole's work. We will not let you erase what he did not build. The phone became a chorus. The clip looped in feeds with little circles dropped on Brittany's wrists, on the angle of her spine. Someone slowed the moment her back hit the panel until it was a classroom. Someone else cut the soundless footage to a soundtrack of clattering keys and wrote commentary in bright blocks that required no attention span. Hashtags spun like little prayers and little knives. Another alert. Emergency vote. The time on the banner matched the clock over the register. Less than 1 hour. Rochelle opened the invite, read the list of names like a ledger, and made a face that counted. We are not going there, she said. We do not sit in rooms built by him to measure you. We will sit where the light is honest and receive outcomes like weather. Text Gerald. 5 lines. She slid Nicole's phone back to her like a pen. Nicole wrote the lines and cut them until they fit her ribs. I am safe. No statements. Preserve all camera assets. I will protect the Foundation's work. Contact me only through counsel. She sent the note and felt a small internal latch drop into place, the click of a lock that had been loose and now held. A new video arrived from someone who had chosen the side of truth or spectacle, and for once, it did not matter which. The hotel lobby glowed on screen, donors washed in gray light, eyes snagged by the loop of the garage. The microphone had been covered by a palm, so the sound was a heartbeat. The camera drifted once and found Christopher in a ring of suits. His mouth moved fast, his eyes cut to the door each time it opened, like a man listening for the knock he did not want. Dorothy watched, then looked at Nicole. Eyes like that will not sleep tonight, she said. That is not your job to fix. The waitress set down fresh water and a check tucked under the sugar caddy. As if ritual might make the room behave, Dorothy eased the slip aside with 2 fingers and left it face down like a closed lid. The flood on the phone eased from roar to steady river. The first rush was over. The echo settled in. A message from the staff channel arrived, a line of clapping hands, and then a sentence that made Nicole's throat tighten without pain. We are with you. Rochelle read it, nodded once, and wrote back only the word received with a small check mark in her voice. She pulled a legal pad and drew 3 boxes with neat labels. Safety, evidence, next 2 days. Pick one, Rochelle said. We fill it. The others wait without spoiling. Nicole tapped safety. Rochelle wrote beneath it like a nurse filling orders. Clothes tonight. A bed tonight. Locks. Numbers you block. Dorothy nodded at each item. A witness who understood that survival loves lists. I can drive, Dorothy said. Guest room at my place. A friendly dog and clean sheets. Or I can take you wherever your friend points. Either way, you do not go back alone. Nicole glanced at Rochelle. Rochelle tilted her chin toward Dorothy, in a yes that did not need words. Nicole turned back. Take me to Rochelle's, she said, and I will meet the dog another day, if he will let me. He is fond of people who keep going, Dorothy said, smiling into her coffee. The neon sign over the door buzzed and threw a soft red frame around the window. The rain slowed until drops formed separate worlds instead of a sheet. Nicole tucked the blanket closer and lifted her chin an inch. The time in the corner of that gray clip glowed in her head like a lighthouse number. The world had seen the same number. The world would do what it does. Fast, messy, loud. She did not have to match its pace. Christopher's name appeared one more time, then stayed away. The phone vibrated once, a single firm note, and stilled under her palm like a creature learning to rest. The heater sighed. The coffee cooled by half. The women made a plan with ink. Out on the highway, sirens moved through the last skirts of the storm. In a boardroom that smelled of glass cleaner and money, men and a few women sat around wood and looked at their hands and at a calendar that had become a countdown. A lobby screen kept looping the moment the white dress struck metal. A red dress stayed still. A small white time burned in the corner and refused to move. Inside the diner, Nicole breathed at the speed of the heater and the pen and the soft knock of Dorothy's ring against her mug. She felt the bruise under the seatbelt line and did not flinch from it. Some marks are honest. Some machines are, too. Rochelle capped her pen. Enough for now, she said. We will let the vote finish without us. Then we choose our next square. Nicole nodded. The clip in her mind steadied to a photograph. The hum inside the phone settled to a quiet that felt like agreement. For the first time since the door had opened to the storm, she believed that waiting could be an action. The bell over the door chimed once. Wind nosed in and left. The neon hummed on. The night, having flipped, began to hold. They left the diner when the rain thinned to a silver veil that whispered instead of roared. Dorothy's truck carried the soft smell of heater dust and coffee, and the vinyl seat gave a weary sigh as Nicole settled with the blanket around her shoulders. Rochelle sat behind her, already working, thumbs moving, voice low and precise when necessary. The wipers kept a patient rhythm, and the road unspooled in calm bands of light. Rochelle's building breathed warm laundry and old paint. Inside, her apartment wore a soft yellow that forgave. She pressed a towel and a long sweatshirt into Nicole's hands. "Wear this," she said, and the joke about burning it later landed like a small, kind smile. In the bathroom, hot water stitched Nicole back into herself, inch by inch. The welt across her chest flushed. An honest road under skin. She washed the storm from her hair and the grit from her palms and watched the drain carry the night away. In the mirror, a face she knew and did not know looked back, steadier than before. On the kitchen table, 3 mugs waited like oaths. Dorothy stirred honey into tea until steam smelled sweet. Rochelle cleared half the table and raised a small island of paper and pen. The clock ticked with a sound that made time feel rounded instead of sharp. "Phone on the cloth," Rochelle said, sliding over a folded towel to catch the case. Nicole laid the phone down. For a beat, there was only the hum of pipes and the far hush of tires on wet pavement. Then the first vibration walked through the wood into her wrists. She turned the screen. A subject line sat at the top like a flag. Termination notice. It read, "Effective immediately." Rochelle leaned closer. "Open it." Human Resources wrote in plain words with no room for theater. Employment ended. Grounds stated, badge disabled. Property to be returned. A time anchored the bottom in careful letters. A morning hour rendered like a stamp. Nicole breathed. The wind did not arrive with music. It arrived like a door that had been left ajar, and now clicked shut. Beneath it, a second note waited. A short steel bar of a line. Preservation protocol initiated. Gerald signed at the bottom. Camera identifiers and paths marched in order. Mirrored drives. Sealed envelopes. Courrier transfert. A final promise sat alone on its own line. Simple and impossible to misunderstand. Physical media to counsel at the hour named. Rochelle exhaled through her teeth in a way that meant good. "That will do." She replied with 2 sentences that read like law and gratitude at once, and added a third that sounded like a lock, chain of custody to include receiving and witness signatures. Gerald answered with the kind of yes that moves feet. Nicole scrolled once and let the rest wait. She was learning not to drink the ocean. She set the phone down. Rain tapped its slow code against the glass. Christopher's name rose again, not as a call now, but as a text stripped of tone. "Answer me." Then another, "We can fix this." Then another line that smelled like pressure. "I am outside." Silence followed. Then an unknown number wearing his voice in letters. "Pick up." The repeated verb did not carry weight anymore. Her throat tightened. She pressed her thumb to the block button and felt a small current travel the bone. Rochelle nodded. "You can keep the voicemails as evidence and still shut the door. Those are not opposing acts." Nicole blocked his number. The screen offered a small, quiet confirmation. She blocked the unknown number, as if sealing a draft in a window. Breath moved easier in her chest. Dorothy kept the room human. She set dry socks near the heater, stirred soup with an honest wooden spoon, and made space without hovering. Rochelle woke her laptop. The glow turned her into the blade Nicole trusted most. In a new document, she set the words chain of custody in bold and drew a clean grid. Camera label, time, file hash, courier name, seal number, receiving signature, witness signature. The printer muttered awake and breathed paper. Dorothy stacked the sheets warm from the machine. A small tower that looked like integrity. The phone buzzed again. Gerald, courier in lobby in a short span. Rochelle pulled a scarf from the hook instead of a coat. You can stay, she said to Nicole. You do not need to touch any of this for it to count. Or you can witness. Your choice. Nicole looked at the rain's soft code on the glass and thought of the red pinprick in the garage and the stenciled letters on the pillar. She stood. I will witness, she said, and the room agreed. They rode the elevator in calm silence. The lobby smelled of wet umbrellas and old money polished too often. A man waited by the desk with a messenger bag strapped across his chest. He did not fidget. He looked like a person who respects packets. Counsel, he said, and placed a hard case on the marble with a respectful thud. Tamper tape crossed the seams like dull red coins. He laid out a form already filled with lines of angles and times. Rochelle read without moving her lips, then tapped 2 blank spaces. Witness, she said to Nicole. Please sign. Nicole took the pen. The ink moved, clean and dark. Writing her name felt like building rather than begging. The courier signed. Rochelle signed. The courier stamped the tape, and the ink kissed the plastic with a flat sound that folded into Nicole and settled like an anchor back upstairs. Rochelle slid the sealed case into a drawer and turned the lock. She keyed a code, checked the handle, then checked again. The bolt seated with a satisfying click. Nicole's shoulders lowered by degrees. Eat, Dorothy said, pushing the soup toward her hands. Zalt steadied her mouth. Warmth filled the hollow places. Dorothy set soft pajama pants on the chair back the way. One sets a forecast on the table. Put these on when you are ready. You can have the bed. I snore and I am no martyr. A small, real smile found Nicole's face and lived there without effort. Stay, she said to both of them. Please do not leave me alone with the quiet, yet we are not going anywhere until you fall asleep on purpose. Rochelle said, then we will take turns being awake and knowing where the case is. Morning pressed its pale hands against the windows. Rain wrote slower. Nicole sat at the table and let the light touch her face. The phone hummed once. An email from the foundation board arrived clean as a bell. Vote concluded. Removal confirmed. Interim leadership to be installed. A second line followed. Formal as a bow. Operations continue under existing governance. A third line stepped in after, not from the board, but from a staffer brave enough to be plain. We stood and clapped when your name came up. The sentence shook her more than the vote. She set the phone down and pressed her palm to the table to stop the tremor from walking. Rochelle read the official note and met Nicole's eyes. This is a small win, she said. Not the last, but it holds. Another message landed from Human Resources. Receipt acknowledged for badge deactivation. Access revoked. The words clicked like a relay going dark. One circuit severed from a system. Nicole took her phone to the window. She opened the list of blocked numbers and looked at the quiet below his name. She remembered that line from the night. I am outside. She looked down at the street. Morning traffic flowed with its own thoughtless grace. No car idled. No shadow waited. He was not her weather. The rain stitched soft dashes across the glass. She did not need their alphabet. She understood. Dorothy joined her at the pane. The storm still has something to say, she said, but it is speaking slower. Nicole nodded. On the table, the sealed case. rested beside the signed form. Paper and ink and tape and signatures, small parts adding up to a wall. Messages kept coming, steady rather than wild. A donor, a reporter, a friend from a winter when she had first learned to be ambitious without apology. She let most of them wait. She opened Gerald's because gravity earns attention. Board will issue statement at midday. It read, "All footage secured. Take care of yourself this morning. We can place an umbrella where you need one if cameras arrive. Thank you," she typed, and then added a line as much for herself as for him. "I will not leave this shelter until I choose the next step." Rochelle drew a line through 2 boxes on the pad. "Safety," she said, tapping the word. "Evidence," she said, tapping again. 2 squares filled. 1 remained. Next 2 days, the letters did not frighten Nicole. They sat calm as mile markers. "I will sleep," Nicole said. "Then I will eat again. Then we plan." Rochelle nodded. Dorothy set a steady palm on Nicole's shoulder. The apartment hummed with small domestic sounds. The heater exhaled. Pipes clicked. A neighbor's radio murmured through a wall. The world outside moved at its clumsy pace. Inside, intention set the beat. Nicole folded into the couch, and the blanket lifted like a warm tide. Her eyes closed without argument. The last thing she saw was rain writing its soft code along the glass, a language she no longer needed to translate because the meaning had settled beneath her breastbone. A phone buzzed somewhere and did not matter. A lock turned and held. In a glass office miles away, a nameplate came off a door, and at a desk that had been built with her hands and would be hers again in the way that mattered. A staffer typed her name with clean fingers and sent it into a day that had decided not to erase her. "Small wins," Rochelle had said. The words warmed the quiet, like a cup between hands. Nicole slept, and the small flame did not go out. The boardroom smelled of glass cleaner and varnish, a careful sterility layered over old arguments. Morning light sliced across the long table in bright bars, leaving cool seams where shadows pooled. A screen waited at the far wall, pale and blank, like a lung holding breath. Somewhere above, the vents made a steady hum that felt like a metronome set to institutional calm. Nicole sat near the end of the table with Rochelle at her right. The sealed evidence case rested between them, tamper tape like dull red stitches along its edges. On top lay the chain of custody form, ink dried to a flat certainty. Nicole's palms warmed the legal pad beneath them. She kept her spine straight and let her breath find the room's quiet rhythm. Board members arrived in small clusters, coats folded over arms, eyes already doing math. Some nodded at Nicole with the solemnity of people who finally believed what had been obvious. Some could not quite look at her yet, and chose the case instead, as if the plastic and tape might be easier to face than a woman who refused to vanish. Gerald entered last, a half step off center for the first time since she had known him. He set a small remote by the screen, glanced at the case, then at Nicole, and offered the smallest nod that meant ready. "We will keep this brief," Gerald said, taking the head of the table as if it weighed more than usual. 3 items only. Vote record, evidence record, continuity plan. Rochelle slid the case forward so the whole table could see it. "May we place the evidence on the table," she said, opening the room the way a litigator opens a door. "The seals will be broken only when we reach that point in the agenda." "Place it," Gerald said. The case met the wood with a soft thud. Nicole felt the sound through her sternum, a quiet anchor. She pressed her thumb against the pad so her pulse would not chase the moment. The secretary read the vote record without drama. Removal confirmed by unanimous consent. 1 abstention recorded for absence. No gloss, no softening. A completed line in the minutes. Nicole watched faces, because faces are minutes that never get typed. Some unclenched. Some guarded what little they had left to guard. One pair of eyes kept flicking to the door like a man waiting for weather to break. Gerald raised the remote. Before continuity, we enter evidence into the record, he said. The screen brightened. The room dimmed a fraction, as if everyone had held the same breath. Rochelle stood the way a surgeon stands. Seal numbers, she said, reading them aloud. They matched the log. Opening case at the time shown by the clock. She broke the tape with a stamped pop that sounded like a period. The drive came out gleaming and ordinary. She plugged it into the table's port. For the record, she said, label matches chain. Then she sat, eyes never leaving the work. Play camera B2. At 22:14:36, Gerald said, the boardroom watched concrete bloom into gray life. Fluorescent bands turned the frame clinical and cold. Brittany in white entered from the far right, a kudut shape against concrete. Her back hit the neighboring car. The alarm flashed in silent, jagged pulses across the screen. Fingernails carved quick red lines on pale forearms. In the left third of the frame, the woman in red stood with hands open, not moving, the still point around which the lie spun and failed. In the corner, the timestamp glowed, small and unconcerned with opinion. No one spoke. In the glass of the windows, the image doubled. Reality laid over sky. The clip ended and began again at Rochelle's nod, then froze on the frame where intention became evidence. Rochelle leaned toward the mic, voice low and clean. Counsel notes for the record. No physical contact initiated by Nicole. Self-inflicted abrasions visible. Alarm triggered by body striking adjacent vehicle. Time code and camera label visible. She let the silence hold a little longer, so the facts could saturate the room. The oldest director, a woman who sharpened pencils to needles, lifted her chin. The camera saw, she said, that is enough. The door at the back breathed open an inch and admitted a familiar silhouette. Christopher stepped 1 foot inside and hovered between threshold and table like a man hoping to be mistaken for a necessity. His jaw was shaved too close. His resolve had the shine of something recently painted. You do not have the floor, Gerald said, without looking at him. I have a right to respond. Christopher said. He put steadiness into the sentence, and it came out thin. Your right is preserved in writing, Rochelle said, eyes never leaving the screen. Not in this room at this time. Christopher gave a dry laugh that surprised his own throat. He took a step forward until his fingers found the table's edge. You are destroying value with theater, he said. Nicole kept her gaze on the screen. The old muscle in her chest that used to rush to explain, too tidy, to repair, rose and then lay back down. She placed her pen on the pad and drew one short line she could feel through the paper. Waiting can be an action. She chose it again. Gerald gestured at the door with the kind of politeness that has a point. We are in session, he said. You may submit a statement to the record after adjournment. Christopher turned to Nicole, as if the room might vanish and leave the two of them in some older, easier air. We built this, he said softly, appealing to the ghost of a vow. Do not burn it because you are angry. Rochelle's pen clicked once, a small metronome of refusal. Nicole did not look at him. She measured her breath against the projector's low whir. She waited until the room's attention fully returned to her, and only then did she stand. The chair moved without scrape, hands still on the table. She spoke to the 12 people who controlled budgets, policies, and letters that became public truth. I do not seek forgiveness, she said. I seek accountability. The words landed and stayed. They did not ask to be liked. They asked to be counted. She lifted the bylaws. The paper felt exactly as heavy as rules should. These are the commitments we wrote when we believed roofs could hold through storms, she said. They state that the mission survives personalities. They require recusals for conflicts. They demand that truth be written in minutes, not assumed in whispers. The pencil woman nodded, a motion that felt like a vote before the vote. A younger director sat up straighter, as if a better version of himself had just been named and he wanted to match it. Nicole slid a one-page outline along the table, the paper whispering across wood. I move 3 actions. First, preserve all evidence as ongoing practice, not as a one-night emergency. Second, affirm that operations do not pause or shrink because of misconduct by one man, however prominent. Third, appoint an interim committee drawn from program staff and community partners to keep the spine of the work straight while titles catch up. Gerald looked to Rochelle. Counsel, he said, all 3 actions are squarely within the bylaws and reduce risk while honoring purpose. Rochelle said, voice pitched low enough to make the room lean closer. I recommend adoption. I move, the pencil woman said, before anyone could pretend confusion. Second, said the younger director, surprised by his own speed. And liking it. Discussion, Gerald asked. A man tugged at a cufflink and suggested softer language around misconduct. His sentence dissolved under the weight of the frozen frame on the screen. A director who ran numbers asked about reserves and runway. Gerald flipped a page and answered with math plain as brick. No one else tried to rearrange the air. Call, the pencil woman said. Hands rose like a tide that knew the shore. Unanimous. 12 votes like small hammers. The motions became weather. Christopher stood very still, trying to be mistaken for dignity. He found Nicole again. You were not always like this, he said very quietly. You used to protect us. Nicole met his eyes at last. Not to be moved, but to be done. Protecting the work is what I am doing, she said. Protecting your story is not my job. His mouth opened, closed. The door opened instead. An assistant stepped in with a printed statement. Gerald accepted it, scanned, and placed it at the center of the table. He read aloud because words deserve voice before they become press. The Foundation reaffirms its mission. Leadership transitions will not interrupt services. Evidence related to recent allegations remains preserved with counsel. We thank staff and partners who carry the work every day. Any objections to language? He asked. There were none. The secretary's pen moved fast and soft. Minutes became an instrument that held. Counsel requests the minutes reflect 3 facts, Rochelle said. Back to the mic. The footage shown is accurate. Chain of custody remains intact. No member attempted to interfere with collection or preservation. So noted, said the secretary, and the pen made it real. Gerald capped the remote like a gavel. One last item, he said, and looked to Nicole. Staff will need direction this afternoon. In person if you prefer, or video if they do, your choice. Nicole pictured faces at desks, vans loaded at dawn, inboxes that never quite emptied. She thought of the quiet line in the staff channel the night before. We are with you, in person, she said. Not to promise what cannot be promised, to set tone and keep it. Gerald's thank you was small and sincere, the kind of gratitude that knows it is late. He turned to the back. Mr. Bennett, he added, finally choosing formality like a fence. Submit any statement through counsel. You do not need to remain. Christopher stared at the frozen frame one last time, as if a new version might reveal itself if he wanted it hard enough. He glanced at the broken seals, the signatures, the case now ordinary because it had already done its work. He looked at Nicole with the old hope that the wife he had rewritten would step forward to make him plausible again. She did not perform the wound or the victory. She held the space. He left. The door settled with a hush that read his verdict. The lights rose. The screen faded to patient blank. Chairs scraped. Pen clicked. The room became a workplace again instead of a stage. Rochelle slid the chain of custody form back atop the case and tapped it once. The sound a soft period. Gerald came round the table and offered his hand. "Thank you," he said, "for clarity, for restraint, for staying standing." Nicole shook it. Her palm was steady. "Appreciation is not absolution," she said, and did not add anything more. In the hall, the carpet smelled faintly of paper and sugar mints. Through the windows, the city moved in lines that belonged to no one at that table. Rochelle pressed the elevator button. "You were exact," she said when the doors opened. "Exact" beats loud. Nicole answered. They rode down in a silence that did not ask to be filled. The security guard in the lobby nodded the way people nod when the air has cleared. Outside, the sky had settled into bright gray, the kind that hums instead of shouting. A wind came and fussed at Nicole's hair, then gave up. "Staff in 2 hours," Rochelle said, checking her watch. "We eat and write 2 pages, one for the room, one for the record." Nicole nodded. She looked up at the mild sky and let the image of the screen settle behind her eyes. Not as pain, but as architecture. A time, a label, a stillness she had chosen and that had chosen her. She released the breath she had been holding since the case thudded onto the wood. "I do not seek forgiveness," she said again, quieter now, for herself and the air between buildings. "I seek accountability." The words did not echo. They took their place and held. The elevator opened to a hallway that smelled faintly of paper and lemon. A clean promise rubbed into tile. Nicole felt the soft hum of the building through her shoe. A steady undercurrent, like a pulse that belonged to the walls themselves. Rochelle walked beside her, watch band clicking lightly with each step. A small metronome marking a day that had decided to move forward without asking permission. Back at the apartment, Dorothy had left eggs under an upturned plate to keep warm. The pan on the stove still held the ghost of butter. A square hand on a square note leaned against a salt shaker. "Eat. Then breathe. Then speak." The words set the room like nails through wood. Nicole ate a few bites and let the warmth steady her. Clarity tasted better than hunger. Rochelle slid over a legal pad and a pen that wrote with a pleasant weight. 2 pages. Rochelle said, "One for the staff room, one for the record." Nicole wrote as if her hand already knew the route. "We keep the doors open. We name harm without apology. We refuse spectacle. We ask for help when we need it. We thank with specificity. We rebuild in daylight." Rochelle read over her shoulder and made one small sound when a line locked into place. The printer muttered and gave the pages back warm. They reached the foundation before the hour. In the lobby, the carpets held the faint sweetness of cardboard and coffee. Staff gathered in a not-quite circle. Faces bright with the particular alertness that follows a long night. The old elevator hummed along one wall like a calm animal. Nicole stood where everyone could see her and could also reach her if a hand needed to be held. She did not climb a step. She did not take a mic. She spoke in a tone that trusted the room to understand words at their natural size. "Thank you," she said, and the word moved like a coat thrown over many shoulders. "We do the work. We will keep doing the work." She named programs by name. She named 2 staffers whose small, quick choices had saved a month of effort during the storm. She named harm without staging it for applause. She ended with a sentence that had become a spine. "I do not seek forgiveness. I seek accountability." The applause that followed was not loud, but it was layered, and no one looked toward the door while they clapped. They looked at each other. Rochelle lifted her phone and recorded a single pass for the archive, a quiet ledger entry for a day that belonged to process. She framed the printout on the table, and then the ring of faces, chain of custody. for the kind of courage that rarely makes headlines. Gerald arrived as the room settled. His tie had remembered itself. He held a letter already opened, the broken seal still attached like a red petal. Media statement goes in 20 minutes. He said, calm and plain, clean. True. We have prepared one more thing. He set a page on the table. It addressed a bank that held promises alongside numbers that never stayed still. The letter cited clauses with tidy names and raised the drawbridge on lines of credit tied to personal conduct. The prose was dry and final, a hinge working as designed. Nicole signed where her name was asked to stand. The pen kissed the paper with a small, flat sound. Somewhere in a glass tower, a status light would change its color. Somewhere, a person paid to watch weight would sit up straighter. Phones began to hum again, not like panic now, but like weather arriving on schedule. A staffer carried in a laptop with a news page open. The headline used ordinary verbs like confirm and preserve. The gray clip sat beneath like a witness without a temper. The top comments were simple enough to hold without spilling. We saw, we believe. Belief is not always ballast, Nicole thought, but today it might be. Rochelle took a call with the tone she reserved for gravity. She listened, eyes narrowing the way people do when they are choosing where to put the next brick. 3 partners have pulled their commitments from his private ventures, she said when she hung up. Another group has frozen a tranche. The statement blames weather. She smiled in a way that was not kind and not cruel. Weather hired a good lawyer this week. Dorothy came in with a tote and a thermos. The thermos held coffee that tasted like decision. The tote held a soft scarf and shirts that did not ask to be looked at. She took up a place near the door, the way a lighthouse takes up a point on a shore. When Nicole's eyes found her, she lifted 2 fingers. The storm is behind the glass. That gesture said, let it clap its hands there. At midday, the foundation statement went out. The words did not try to run. They walked with their heads up. We reaffirm. We continue. Evidence is preserved. We thank the people who show up. Outside, voices braided and unbraided on the sidewalk. 2 security staff drew a line with posture and face, and questions fell short of the marble. Nicole walked past with a pace that neither hurried nor dragged. The air remembered how to carry itself. Then Overreach arrived, dressed like strategy. A letter from Christopher's counsel whispered conspiracy and defamation, and a woman using rain for theater. It went to 3 donors and 2 directors, and a journalist copied with the care of a man who had practiced this move when the world was still clapping for him. Rochelle read the letter twice, made no expression that would feed it, and opened the folder where the voicemails lived. She attached 1 file and 1 receipt and wrote 4 patient words. Statement appended for context. His sentence arrived with his own voice and its timestamp. The courier receipt below it like a steel rail. You stopped being my wife a long time ago. The journalist answered with 1 word and then another. Understood. Publishing. Nicole did not smile. Tides reach shores, even when no one watches the clock. Overreach is a kind of confession. She let the effect arrive without narrating it. Afternoon folded toward evening without drama. Staff returned to their desks with lists that made sense. Vans went out on routes that still fit the map. The building's old pipes clicked and cooled down. The windows slid from bright gray to pewter. At the back door, a coordinator paused with his hand on a dolly and met Nicole's eyes. We are still here, he said. She nodded. The words warmed her chest like a small stove. Gerald sent 1 more note. A second investor group had paused a fund that carried Christopher's name. Their message used the language of institutions trying to sound like neighbors. We take seriously. We will review. Effective immediately. Nicole closed her eyes for 3 even breaths and opened them on the same view. Exact beats loud, she thought, and felt the truth of it down to the hands. Later, the 3 of them ate a pizza that had gone warm in its box. The cardboard smelled like oregano, and a plan working. Dorothy told a story about a flood 5 years back, and a canoe tied to a stop sign the sky had left as a joke. Rochelle laughed once in the way that lets a room exhale. Nicole rested with her feet under the blanket and her shoulder against the couch. The sealed case slept in the locked drawer. The key sat on the table like a small metal fact. Her phone buzzed 3 times in the hour. A donor renewed and added a line for mental health support. A staffer sent a photograph of boxes labeled with a date that did not belong to the storm. A classmate from law school wrote 5 words and a phone icon. If you need a courtroom, she sent back thank you, and meant it twice. Toward twilight, a clip rose from a tower on the water's edge. A board declared a change in leadership at a company whose lobby had once been a mirror of a man. The language walked in clauses with no adjectives. The camera held a moment on a chair without a body. Empty leather shone under too much light. Nicole stopped reading the commentary after 2 lines because she had no use for that kind of fire. At the window, the sky shifted from pewter to ink. The city lit itself in patient layers. In the glass, she could see herself and the room, and the 2 women who had refused to leave her alone with the quiet. Dorothy folded the blanket to a neat square. Rochelle capped her pen and set it true on a pad. The phone, face down now, let out one last small sound and fell still. Rochelle turned it over. A brief message from Gerald. Not a command, not a request. Sleep. We can carry until morning. The words put a hand on a shoulder and withdrew on purpose. Nicole left the blinds half open so the city could practice being kind. She washed her face with water that had finally found its temperature. In the mirror, the seatbelt welt had begun to fade into the honest topography of a body that keeps records. She touched it once without flinching. Some marks warn, some marks teach. This one did both. She lay down and the bed took her weight as if it had been waiting for the work to be done. The heater sighed. A car passed on the wet street and left a long hiss behind, like a line of ink drying. From the kitchen came the tap of a spoon against ceramic. From the table came the tiny yawn of a printer finding sleep. Her last thought before sleep was not about loss or applause. It was about process, about timestamps and signatures and doors that close with the right click, about words that fit their frames and do not wobble. She remembered the sentence she had offered to a room that chose to listen. I do not seek forgiveness, I seek accountability. The words did not echo. They settled behind her ribs like steady light. Across the city, in a room smaller than he preferred, a man stared at a phone that would not answer to his name. He wrote a sentence, erased it, wrote another, erased that too. He looked for a frame that did not exist. Overreach had taken his hands and made them clumsy. In Nicole's chest, the match that had outlived the rain burned without drama. The night did not need thunder to be faithful. It needed breath and a room that held. She slept, and the machine of the city hummed on, indifferent and kind in turns. The story built on noise began, finally, to collapse under the weight of facts. Morning came without ceremony, a pale linen wash over rooftops and windows that had learned to be calm. The apartment carried the domestic orchestra of a day that intended to be useful. The heater breathed a steady hush. A kettle shaped a low note from the kitchen. At the table, Rochelle's pen made a soft scratch that sounded like intention rather than worry. Nicole woke with the simple knowledge that nothing inside her was bracing anymore. The welt across her chest had faded to a faint road, a fact the body kept without asking permission. She pressed her palm there. not to test pain, but to acknowledge survival, turned into information. The room smelled of coffee and paper and a little toast, priorities that felt like a map anyone could follow. Dorothy slid a mug toward her and tipped it once, as if blessing a voyage. "Eat first," she said, "then you can choose what kind of quiet you want to carry." Nicole smiled and obeyed. The toast cracked neatly under her teeth. Coffee warmed the corners of her nerves until they stopped reaching for alarms that were no longer ringing. "2 items," Rochelle said. Without looking up from the list she was building into the day. A court notice on the false report and the agenda for the afternoon. She tapped the folder with her pen. "Scholarships. Names we have said out loud all year." Nicole nodded. The word yes lived in the movement of her head more than in her mouth. She rinsed her plate. She folded the towel over the sink so it could dry into order. Small obediences made a scaffolding no storm could tilt. The hall for the ceremony lived in an old school. Floors glossed with varnish and time, windows high enough to earn the light they let in. A banner ran along the back wall, its message short and plain. Letters the color of patience. Staff moved the way strong clocks move, each hand exact and unhurried. Folding chairs settled into rows with small metallic sighs. A volunteer tested a microphone and then set it aside because voices, today, were enough. Nicole stood at the rear for a little while and let the room breathe around her. She counted packets, checked spellings, corrected one with a quiet pen stroke. She hugged a woman who asked for it and shook hands with a man who wanted to keep his posture neat. Dorothy tamed a long table into order, lining pens beside programs, beside water bottles, until the surface looked like a promise kept. Rochelle haunted the edges, measuring minutes with her eyes, making invisible work feel held. People entered in pairs and in careful clusters, faces bright with relief that they were here for the work and not the noise. A girl with a tight braid held her form with both hands, as if she had been practicing for this specific weight. A man in a uniform jacket removed his cap and stood straighter than any line required. Voices found one another and braided into a music humble enough to carry meaning. Gerald arrived with his tie almost perfect, and a look that said sunlight behaved differently inside this building today. He laid a small box on the table and opened it to reveal pins shaped like open doors. "Not my idea," he said, his voice steady with the good kind of apology. Staff wanted a mark that said, "Welcome without using mouths." Nicole turned a pin in her fingers. The metal caught light and then gave it back, which is what good metal should do. The ceremony began without anyone asking for silence. The room quieted itself. A program lead spoke in a voice you could use to read a recipe and still make people hungry. Stories came out in measured lines, hours studied, buses taken, shifts traded, rent met with stubborn dignity. A mother clapped with careful hands that held the edge of tears and did not drop them. When it was time for Nicole to step forward, she did not climb to the podium. She moved one pace toward the center, enough for the back row to find her face. "Thank you," she said, and the word moved like a coat across many shoulders at once. "We are here because the work is bigger than any one name. We are here because you did the hours, and we kept the doors open. We will keep doing both." She did not repeat the sentence about forgiveness and accountability. It was present in the room without ink. It lived in paper and signatures, and in the way the door had held when it mattered. A volunteer passed the first certificate. Nicole checked the spelling and the date and the line of a hyphen that wanted to wander. She handed the document to a young woman whose hands trembled like strings right before a note. "Congratulations," Nicole said, and meant it in every direction the word could travel. A camera clicked from the side for the archive, and the student met the lens head-on with a steadiness that made the flash feel unnecessary. The line found its rhythm, names announced, hands clasped, photos taken without theater. A man with shy eyes tucked his certificate into a folder and then opened it again to read the name one more time, as if the letters might ask for witnesses. A grandmother asked Nicole to hold the paper inside a frame while she fumbled gently with her phone. Nicole held paper and frame and moment together, careful as if all three were glass. Between names, Rochelle stepped close, speaking in a volume only a person at her elbow could hear. "The court set a hearing in late spring," she said. "The judge adopted our preservation protocol as baseline. They withdrew a motion without argument." Nicole felt a quiet click inside. A mechanism choosing the right notch. "Boring," she said, and let the word be a prayer answered. Dorothy tapped her watch. A single practical note. "Water break," she called, and because her voice carried the history of long shifts, the room obeyed. Backs stretched, cups refilled. Gerald straightened a stack of forms by squaring them once against the table's edge. A staffer fixed a banner corner with a strip of clear tape applied at a righteous angle. A reporter waited in the doorway with a notepad and a face he hoped read as respectful. Rochelle intercepted him with clean boundaries and a small nod to good faith. "No cameras in front," she said. "We will share 3 photographs and a paragraph after." He agreed as if rules were a kind of dignity he missed. When the second half began, the light through the high windows had warmed from linen to butter. Dust hung in the beams like a secret industry, proof that air is always working. Nicole caught the gaze of a girl wearing a red ribbon twisted into a small flag. The color tugged something kind and fierce behind Nicole's ribs. She lifted 2 fingers. The girl lifted hers back. A silent treaty held between them for a breath, and then for the rest of the afternoon. The room did not empty all at once. People lingered the way they do when exiting means returning to an ordinary still rearranging itself. Nicole stayed at floor level, listening at the shallow hum between chairs. A woman explained a commute that required too many transfers and a coat that needed to be free of logos, so walking to school would be safer. Nicole promised nothing theatrical. Outside, the sky had chosen a soft gray that belonged to clear evenings. The wind smelled faintly of wet stone even though the sidewalks were dry. Rochelle leaned against brick with hands in her coat and a posture that admitted fatigue and earned it. Dorothy sat on the steps and retied a bootlace with the concentration of someone signing a contract her feet could trust. Nicole paused in the doorway and let the empty chairs become a kind of proof. The banner hung true. A janitor propped the door with a cardboard wedge and pushed a broom whose soft whisk sounded like a seam being sewn back to strength. The quiet felt earned instead of fragile. Her phone buzzed with the polite restraint of a message that did not wish to own her attention. Gerald wrote one line. "Court acknowledged our protocol as best practice." Opposing counsel withdrew without argument. The language laid itself in her chest like level stone. No shout, no triumph pose, just the right mechanism at work. They walked home while evening placed its hands across rooftops. A bus sighed and moved on. A boy dragged a stick along a fence and counted in a whisper meant only for his own math. On a corner, a woman handed a paper sack to a man, and the gesture looked like trust at a reasonable scale. The city hummed at a volume that did not require translation. Upstairs, Dorothy heated soup and refused to ask if anyone was hungry because she already knew. Rochelle opened her laptop and entered 3 small notes into the ledger of the day. Nicole stood at the window and watched building after building blink on in patience. Her reflection gave her back a face she recognized now without flinching. Her gaze slid to the drawer where the sealed case slept. She did not touch it. The chain held without supervision. She thought of the underpass and the breaths she had counted there. She thought of a camera housing with a red pin like a patient star and of numbers at the corner of a frame that would not lie for anyone. She thought of a chair left empty under hard light, and of the way small exact words can move a room more than anything shouted. Dorothy set bowls on the table and the ceramic kissed wood. Rochelle pushed the laptop aside and reached for a spoon. "Eat?" Dorothy said, smiling without ceremony, and Nicole did, because receiving care is not submission when the giver has proven her hands. After dinner, Rochelle drew a single sheet from the folder and laid it in front of Nicole. "A memo," she said. "Program expansion. Staff drafted it after lunch. We can add miles to the van route without starving the reading room." Nicole read the lines. The numbers sat in order like soldiers who knew their places. She signed at the bottom. The pen lifted and left a dot that felt like a seal on soft wax. Night arrived as ink rather than drama. Nicole left the blinds half open so the city could be kind in little lights. Down the block, a siren wrote one careful line and then practiced self-control. The heater breathed. The building settled into a posture that made sleep feel like an agreement rather than an escape. Rochelle tossed a pen cap toward a cup and missed and laughed and let the miss be fine. Dorothy folded the blanket into a square and patted it once as if saving a promise for morning. Nicole sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her thumb to the faint road on her chest. The ache had become data. She lay down and the mattress received her the way a good document receives a clear signature. Her last thought before sleep was a list she did not need to write because her bones kept it. Keep the doors open. Write the minutes. Preserve the files. Witness when asked. Refuse spectacle. Share credit. Demand signatures. Lock the drawer. Teach the next person the combination. She turned toward the window. The night held. The city hummed at a courteous volume. Somewhere, someone typed a headline and chose not to dress it in fireworks. Facts sat like ballast beneath the words. In this room, breath moved with diligence. In this room, process beat chaos without raising its voice. Nicole slept under a sky that had learned restraint. The story kept its shape without her holding it up. Morning would arrive with lists and doors and a small stamp on a new form. Justice, content with its lane, would sign in cold ink. Every storm, no matter how violent, eventually runs out of rain. Nicole's story reminds us that strength is not always about shouting the truth. It's about standing still in it when the world tries to twist your silence into guilt. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in the form of revenge or apology, but through the quiet dignity of persistence, documentation, and boundaries. In a world quick to reward noise, Nicole chose precision. She proved that gold fears no fire, that integrity, tested under pressure, does not burn away. It clarified. Her journey is a mirror for anyone who has been gaslit, dismissed, or made to question their own worth. It tells us that walking away from toxic loyalty isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That fairness isn't a gift we wait for, it's a structure we build, one act of accountability at a time. And that healing doesn't always roar. It sometimes arrives as a signature on paper, a door still open, a night finally quiet enough to sleep through. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to choose truth over peace or silence over noise? I'd love to hear your reflections. Remember to like this video if it moved you, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Each one built on courage, clarity, and the steady heartbeat of justice. May your own nights be calm. your boundaries firm, and your mornings full of light.